Hello, everyone. Today we are doing a QC Live interview. The idea is that we will go through different documents and we can talk about what's potentially wrong with the document. And so that's kind of a time to chime in. So I think what we'll do is that we'll give Spencer first pass, and then if you don't know, then Nick or Zane, you can jump in. And then we can always discuss about the document, like what we're looking for and things like that. Okay. So let me pull up our first document. Okay, I'm going to drag it into the screen, I think. I might just do that. Maybe put it right here. Can you still see it? Is it large enough or is it really tiny? On my monitor, so it's hard to. That look okay?
That looks good, yeah.
Good, okay. All right. So, Spencer, what do you know of this document? What do you think it is? And you can always just kind of, if you don't 100% know, you can just talk about where you think it could fit into a study and why it would be important. And then we will kind of scan through it and you let me know if you catch anything that you think is odd and would be a QC rejection is what we would call it if we saw something that didn't look good. All right, sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good. I will attest, I don't have like the thing pulled up to do comparisons or whatever.
Yeah.
But this would just be like, I forget the actual word, but just telling the potential client or the potential volunteer what they're signing up for, but for their kid.
Yep, perfect. So yeah, informed consent form. So ICF is a terminology, but you nailed it with it's informing the patient of what they're getting into. And as you said here, it's an assent, so it's a child in that sense. Anything that you see missing other than my name is, like that part is meant to be blocked off.
It looks like it should have a protocol number.
Yep, correct. It does not have a protocol number. Okay. And then let's look at, we'll just kind of scan through it. You stop me if you see anything. And I'm looking too. Okay, we're on page 4. And in general, when you QC a document, you kind of want to go at this speed. You don't typically want to be reading the whole thing word for word, just because that's kind of not particularly your job. So anything that you see.
And just all the information at the end, and then looks like the 9th page is missing.
Yep, exactly. So it says page 8 of 9. There's 2 page 8s of 9. Very clever, Zane. I like that trick.
Good job, Zane.
They did a great job preparing these documents for us. So those are the 2 items missing on this document. Now it has a blank signature, but that's supposed to be blank because this is you won't see as somebody who is reviewing TMF documents at the sponsor end, you do not see the signed version. The signed versions remain at the site, and that's called the sites file. And so typically we do not do a TMF QC of those. If you're a monitor and you're going out, you might do that. I actually haven't seen that in like monitoring instructions and guides. They usually are making sure that the sponsor's TMF is in order. I'm not 100% sure who makes sure that the site's files are in order. I don't know, Nick, do you have any insight on that?
I know that a lot of the CRAs will go on site and make sure that they're at least like, they're not really QCing them for like completeness and stuff, but they're making sure that the subject that is enrolled on the study has actually signed them, you know. But other than that, it's mostly just like study coordinators, but they're all staying at the site anyway. So as long as they have it for their record, kind of, it's their responsibility.
Yep, no, that sounds good. Yeah, so the CRA would go out, make sure things are signed. But I don't know, I don't think they treat the site files as to the level of a TMF in terms of like how it has to be organized. I know that one time I've gone out to a site and looked at documents and they had the wrong patient number in there. I was like, wait, this number is familiar. And I like went back to like 2 patient files and I was like, wait, And they were like, oh yeah, let me correct that. Like the study coordinator came over and just like erased it. I was like, oh, great. Glad we're doing great rectification here. Very confident about you guys. All right, so let's do the next one. Actually, let's skip that one and we're gonna maybe do some different, and we'll come back to that. This is a good one. All right, so this is kind of, I know we went over this in your practice interview, Spencer, but I want you to tell me all about this document, what you expect, why you use it, important things to look out for. And then if you notice anything wrong in the QC, I'm gonna try to put this guy, he jumps in. So that worked. Okay, good. Okay, so what is this document? What do you know about it? What would you use it for? And then we'll look for any sort of QC errors on it.
Oh, that one's a 1572, and it's from the FDA, and it's for them. It's going to have all of the lab address and information on it. It will have like a investigator, primary investigator, sub investigators informations on it. And then it's like the investigator will sign off on it, basically taking accountability for the lab site and saying, hey, I'm here, I'm going to do all the things right, and it's on me, like buck stops here type of thing.
That is correct. Very good. Yeah, signature, one of the main things you want to look for. I think you nailed all the different sections. Anything you see wrong on this, and we can scan through it a couple times. Let's see. And if you hear Luke in the background, my apologies. Should be going to sleep, but we have homework. Because who knew kindergarten was like a part-time job for the parents? All right. Anything you see that's kind of funky with this document?
I mean, it's hard to see the page numbers. But...
Yeah.
And there's, I mean, there's a lot of missing stuff, but I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. You're looking for the page numbers. Let's keep seeing if we see they look appropriate, but they're very tiny.
There's oh, there is a date. Like section 8 isn't checked off.
Yep, section 8. There's none of these are checked. So usually it's a phase 1 or it's a phase 2 or 3. So that's a checkbox missing. Let's see, Zane, anything else wrong in this document?
Well, on the second column, you can see the curriculum vitae is not checked as well.
Okay, is that at the top or?
On the first page.
On the first page, okay. Yes, this box. So yeah, second box, CV is not checked. Yes, awesome, thank you, Zane. Cool, so that's what you would look for in 1572. Spencer gave a great overview of its uses. I would say if somebody had asked me, I'd also say that here's a little blurb. I think you kind of mentioned on this, but it's really useful to then check. It's like a key to then check for all the other site personnel for this site items. So like now you know to check for a CV for the PI, and usually there's a whole bunch of sub investigators, and you want to look for their licenses and things like that.
That's right.
Okay. And then I know last time you mentioned you didn't know this document, so I'm going to pull it up for you. And you can tell me if you guess about what you think it is, but then we can talk about it a little bit. A part of this is just an exercise to go over the documents with you.
Yeah, well, that's great. Am I the only one like?
Yes, being quizzed today.
I assume Nick was also in my same boat, but it sounded like he wasn't.
No,
Okay.
Nick's like a pro now, which is so wonderful. Like it's like the great joy of Power of Work is that I feel like there's so many people that we've been trying to help, and they're like now exceeding my knowledge, which is like wonderful. That's like the what you want. I want everybody to go off and then eventually be managers, and then you have to help us hire more people. Okay. So Spencer, tell me more about what do you think this document is? The hint is I mentioned it last time we talked.
Oh, this was the one you said, CLIA, and I remembered hearing that from some of my nursing friends in the past after like you and I chatted about it. But yeah, it's just a lab certification, like saying, hey, we have this certification for our labs here.
Yep. And one thing you check is to make sure that the expiration date is not expired. In this case, almost all the documents will have, unless we've edited them, will have an expired, right? So that's a good test. But when we're doing the practice project, a lot of them, they'll always come up as expired. And then, yeah, it should be signed by somebody. Usually it should have see the laboratory name and address that should match the 1572 that you're looking for. So, right, in this case, it's not, because let's say they're different sites, but your 1572, you should be able to scroll. Yeah, I think we're at the right spot. And you can see the lab, and usually it's like your central lab. And so you just make sure that matches, right? And if you don't see it, then it means you probably need another one. So there can be multiple labs per site, and they should have a CLIA, the Clinical Laboratory Improvement Amendments, which is basically a general certification. And then you want the CAPA, which is a similar lab certification. CAP.
Yeah.
And then you want usually like the CV of the lab director.
Okay.
So those are
Great.
things that you kind of can look for if you're looking at like the overview of everything going on. And basically, like, so if somebody asks you what can you discern from a 1572, you can also say the lab, and therefore I would want to find matching CAP and CLIA and CV of lab director. Okay, we'll do
Okay.
the next one. And let me see if there's anything wrong. Oh, I guess that we had some other items here. Yeah, the CAP. Yeah, okay, so there's different ones. Okay, I'm gonna pull up this one. This should be an obvious one. If you're QCing this, tell me what's wrong with this document. Zane found a great one. Don't know how you found this, Zane, or if you made this. All right, what's wrong with this document? Which
Oh, it's not.
COA would this stand for? Which one is an interesting?
It's not obvious or accurate or
Can't tell anything. It's definitely not legible.
legible. Yes.
You cannot
I'm gonna have to
tell.
go through them. CLI. Yeah.
Yeah, I can go through the checklist to see which ones it most works. But yeah, very distorted, very blurred. I feel like this is more rare nowadays. This used to be very common. Because in my day, I was the transition of paper to digital, and a lot of people had issues, or they would like scan it and not. So I feel like a lot of the things that we teach people to look out for are pretty rare, in the sense of there's a pretty low rate of issues where the blurring, or you're getting like, all even pages, or, page numbers missing. I feel like just people have known more, or more common sense to check. So yeah, so that's why this one would definitely be a QC fail. Okay, this is a good one, and I'd like you to think about what this document is, and it's a good document to know. Okay, let me pull it over. Okay, get this one, that works. Okay, what is this document? You can just look through and read it and kind of get an idea.
Oh, it's the line of authority is the legal term in financial planning. But yeah, it's just delegating what people's authorities are or responsibilities.
Yeah, so it's the pre-study site visit report up here, and yeah, and usually the
Okay.
title of the document will give you a clue. But yeah, it does give the sponsor representative who's going on, and then it's the visit that goes when people go out to the site. We were talking about travel last time, right? And we talked about how often do people travel, and so the CRAs travel a lot, and any kind of time they visit the site, they're usually there. The pre-study and kind of like the kickoff meeting that they do. So this is before, usually this is pre-study, so this is before the study starts. And a lot of times you'll be assessing if the site has the right items, and then also usually teaching them about what the study's even about. Sometimes it happens separately, in terms of how a company does that will differ in terms of they have like a questionnaire that goes out first, and that's what they do to collect information about like how many study coordinators do they have, what their lab equipment is like. Sometimes they'll go out and inspect it themselves, but it's just a report from usually when the monitor's out, but a lot of times the first one or two, the CTM will also join. So here's just kind of introducing all the different people. And then let's scan through and see what else might be wrong with this. Okay, do you see any issues?
I don't know if that date modified needs to be there.
Let's see. Is that the data visit, or were you looking at?
Date report modified upper right corner of the current
Oh,
screen.
okay. I think it's only if applicable if it's been edited, but that's good. It's a good idea to catch anything that looks blank to look into it. And then I usually scan all the boxes. Do you see anything weird with the boxes being checked or anything?
Oh, just 3. Sorry, that was kind of light.
Yeah, 3 has both a yes and an NA. So just, somebody misclicked, but that's something that you want to look for. Again, a lot of times, like we talked about, you want to always overcatch things, especially as you're learning. But you can overcatch and then you can give it to your boss or your colleague or whoever is your manager and say, what do you want to do with this, right? If it's a CRA, maybe you can have them redo it. But if it's an old document, usually it's just good that you note it. So like if there's an inspection, it shows that you're catching things, but then you just have somebody from the site side say that's the best copy we have. Because realistically, the amount of effort it goes to remaking something and having people re-sign it can potentially be worse. But that way, at least the inspector knows that you're watching things and you're trying to catch things. So better to overcatch things, but your expectance of the site to reproduce the document should be kind of low. If they can, great, but they won't always do that. Okay, let's keep scrolling through. See if you guys see anything else that looks odd. Okay.
Just all those empty boxes from 28.
Yep. Whole
onto
section of
33.
no checks. Now, one thing that's nice about these documents, so any sort of monitoring, any sort of visit report, I think are really useful documents because it gives you an insight to the study and then also to the site, right? Like what's actually going on. From the study side, you get to get an insight in terms of what like the TMF managers or what the monitoring report kind of creation got done in the sense of what are people looking for? Like what do they want the monitors to look for and what they want them to ask? So that's why looking through these documents is useful to get familiar with what's going on in the studies. But then here, for example, it says, what is the site's total anticipated subject enrollment? That's a really important question. Usually they're trying to understand how many patients do they think the site will enroll. And here they're saying 6 per year is conservative and realistic. They think they can do it. And so that's something to know that like, okay, they're going to have 6 here. And then you'll get to see how they do, right? So sometimes sites will just take off and do a whole bunch, or sometimes they'll really overestimate how many they think they can enroll. Later, because this is just a very introductory report, right? Later, when it's like a monitoring visit, they might note things that are issues. And that's useful because then you can see those issues and you can try to check the TMF, right? If it said something was missing, you can look, did they ever find it? And did they ever put it in the TMF, or is it still missing, right? So you can get some more insight on details of the actual specific site, or did people get sick, or what's kind of going on at the site through the monitoring report. So this one is useful, but not as much as like a later monitoring report, but just to being familiar with the document, being familiar that you want these boxes checked and what you're looking for. And then let's see if it has some of these have like a digital signature at the end. So yeah, there's like a DocuSign and DocuSign by the CRA and DocuSign by the CTM. Okay, so
Great.
let's look at another useful document for you to learn.
So that was not delegation of authority. Like that's what I originally was thinking. It was not that.
No, it's
Okay.
just not. But it was kind of highlighting who's doing what in the study from the sponsor side. Now tell me what this document was or is. It technically was a document, but what is
Oh,
this
okay.
document?
Is this a DOA?
And yeah,
The-
I
the-
had already selected this document before you asked your question.
I believe you.
It was just next in line. So yeah, do you describe how is this document useful and what would you look for and what's important for it?
Right. So just dates and signatures and who is eligible to do what. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
and
really
it
important
meets
part.
all of-
Gives you an idea
Go
of
ahead.
who is off the study, right? So everyone who says stop date means that they're ideally done, right? They're no longer in that. So that's why you can have pages and pages. And that's why it might be that you have a stop date here. And it's not weird that these two haven't stopped, right? This is the PI. So he ideally shouldn't stop unless they have a
Mhm.
replacement PI. And then as you mentioned, you did a really great job. You mentioned which task they're delegated. This can actually help if you need like additional trainings. Usually you don't always have to dig that deep, but that's usually what I did if I was really looking for kind of making sure that an inspection, like there wasn't anything weird where somebody who was doing something that they were not actually supposed to do. I think it's more of the CRA's job to that level. But just need to be aware of that they have codes here and then the codes are down here for what they're supposed to be doing. But yes, if they've ended, that they've signed, and that gives you an insight on if they are still going, you should still have new materials, right? CV and trainings for them.
Is there a key to like delegated tasks since they just have like letters defining
What do you
those?
mean? Like yeah, right
Like
here.
what C, A, or F in the delegated task column?
Yeah, in the delegated cat.
Oh, I
yeah,
see. I see
yeah,
it. Yeah, I see it.
section. Yeah, no, yeah, and that's why getting more familiar with the documents helps know how to read it and where you see. This is pretty standard in my opinion in terms of the layout. But as I've mentioned before, like the 1572 is really the only like for sure standard document on a US site, in the sense that the format for the monitoring report and the format for the DOA log might be different, right? This is pretty standard. Usually like they have basic information at the top, who they are, and then the code for what they're doing. And then something to point out is that the page numbers, like that last section, usually is blank unless the site is done and this is the final version. Usually the log gets collected periodically so that the sponsor is aware of what's happening. So you are not expecting to see a signature yet, nor are you expecting to see that last number there.
Okay.
So yeah.
So
Okay, and then what else do we see? Anything else wrong with this document?
it's missing the third page.
Yep, correct. Okay, and I think we'll just do one more. You're doing great, and it is good just to get a little familiar with these different documents.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what is this document? Give it a second to pop up. What do you think it is?
It's more certifications or licensing for the individual that's not listed.
Yes, yeah, the individual that's blacked out. So yes, that is correct. That's good because I wasn't too sure if you would. I know that you're just getting introduced to the documents, whether or not you'd think this is like for a lab or something, but the city program is a very common training platform that does the GCP training, just like you did your own GCP training through that link that I had sent out. This is their version of it. But this is a very standard one that we see across the board. And ideally, if it's expired, you'd want another one. Again, the rules that you collect these documents out is per your company. There's kind of industry standards, but the company gets to kind of write their own SOP on how often they expect things to be collected and things like that. I know that collecting CVs is becoming less common. And again, it's like an initial interpretation of the regulations. Kind of people were collecting CVs and licenses and trainings like every year. And I think a lot of places have relaxed that. So again, it's per what your company says to do. But yep, this is their GCP training. It looks like they're in Canada. And yeah, let's see. Is there anything wrong with the document? Anything weird? This is a tricky one that they did. I did not catch it when I initially looked.
Yeah, so it expired before it was completed.
Yes,
So it's
yes,
just a misprint, obviously. I would
yes.
hope, otherwise someone's doing something wrong.
Yeah, someone's being fishy. That's a good one, Zane. I didn't think of that one either. So thank you for hanging out with us and going through different documents. Hopefully you found it useful. I think it's really great if you continue to go through the document library, look at all the documents and just get familiar with them. It will help
sure.
you. Yeah, it'll help you have, if somebody randomly asks you a question in an interview related to a document, you'll know it. I think it's fairly rare, other than like, let's say the 1572, maybe delegation of authority log. But usually the questions are more on like Alcoa and like higher level, but it's going to be really helpful when you actually start your job, that you would actually like
Okay.
know what you're looking for, and you'd look at a document, you'd recognize it. Okay, this is training. This goes in the training folder. You know, you just get more familiar with it. So yeah, and then Nick, any advice, anything else that you'd like to share, or other documents that you think are important to learn?
Yeah, I think you did a good job, Hillary. Just basically, yeah, getting familiar with these documents. A lot of the times the title is like right at the tippy top, and you know, you just kind of have to like, you just have to get familiar with them is the biggest thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was telling Spencer, one of the few things that I think we can get power of work people, we can get them really familiar with all the documents, and we can get them, you know, like a really good knowledge level. But there is something to be said about like just having that time working with the documents. And so that's why just reviewing the document library, looking at them, looking at, you know, the practice project, being familiar with a variety of documents, will really help. Because that's the only thing is that that's what somebody who's been doing it for a while, that's like the only major difference.
Yeah.
I
And you
feel like
can
when-
even, you could even like go through like the DIA reference model, and it gives the name of the documents, and just type them into Google and then put like clinical trial after it and go to Google Images and see what it has, you know, and that can help like, you know, you get familiar with like different documents and stuff.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
Nick and our little DIA log, we have links to all of them, but Zane, that's a great idea. Maybe because I think we're running out, we have like old documents. So yeah, maybe we should do that and try to keep refreshing so we can like build a bigger document library. Right now we have a lot of older documents that we've collected over the years. So,
Yeah.
So cool. All right, thank you guys. I appreciate you joining me this evening, and let me know if you have any questions, Spencer, and good luck applying to things, and keep us posted when you have an interview.
Great. Thank you
Sounds
so
good?
much.
All right, bye everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Right.
Bye.